ever watched an abuse victim testify in court and thought, why is she laughing? Why can't she remember dates? Why is she so emotional? Or maybe you've been that woman. Maybe you've sat in a courtroom trying desperately to tell your story only to walk away wondering, why did no one believe me? Why did I fall apart? Why did he look calm while I looked like a mess? Today we're talking about one of the biggest misconceptions in family court, the belief that victims should look like victims. Because the reality is this: some of the most traumatized people I've met don't look traumatized at all. And some of the calmest people in the courtroom may be the very people causing the trauma. If you've ever wondered why your abuse case didn't go the way you expected, this conversation may explain more than you realize. So, what do people expect a victim to look like? Most people have an image in their mind of what a victim should look like. They expect someone who is crying, afraid, soft-spoken, emotional, consistently upset, and sometimes they can appear that way, sometimes they can't. But trauma doesn't always work that way. Trauma responses are often messy, they're inconsistent, and sometimes they're completely misunderstood. One victim may cry uncontrollably, another may appear completely numb. One may become angry, one may tell her story perfectly, another may struggle to remember basic details. The problem is that courts are filled with human beings, right? And human beings often make assumptions based upon behavior. When someone's behavior doesn't match expectations, credibility can become an issue. So why does trauma change how people present? Let's talk about what trauma actually does. When someone lives in a state of chronic fear, their brain adapts. Their brain becomes focused on survival, not performance, not public speaking, and not courtroom testimony, but survival in that fight or flight mode. That's why trauma survivors often experience memory problems, difficulty concentrating, confusion under stress, and emotional flooding. If you're a sports fanatic, you know when they say there's only 1 minute left remaining in the period, you know those athletes, they go into that fight or flight mode, right? The panic sets in. Or when you're taking that test, right, and your professor or your teacher says 5 minutes left, and all of a sudden your brain just goes completely blank, right? You are panicked. It's the same kind of thing when you're going through trauma. You're in that fight or flight, that panicked mode all the time, and your brain just goes completely blank. Sometimes we shut down completely. Many women will testify with a deer in the headlights. They're asked a question, and even though they have incident after incident after incident, hundreds of incidents that they could recall, everything just gets garbled up and they can't recall anything. Many women come into my office terrified because they can't remember every date. They know what happened, they've lived through it, but trauma doesn't store memories like a video recording. Trauma stores pieces, images, sensations, and emotions. And then when you're placed under the pressure of cross-examination, your brain may struggle to organize those pieces. That doesn't mean you're lying, it may mean you're traumatized. So let's look at 4 trauma responses that frequently show up in court. So the first one is flat affect. This is when someone appears emotionally disconnected, right? Kind of boring. There's no tears, no emotion, no reaction, no expression really on the face. People often assume if she was really abused, she'd be upset. But trauma can cause emotional numbing, and the brain shuts emotions down as a protective mechanism. Number 2, nervous laughter. This one surprises people. Even sometimes surprises me as an attorney if I'm sitting waiting my turn on the bench to be heard and there is a victim testifying or someone testifying and they do this really loud, nervous laughter. It even kind of takes me by surprise on occasion. Some survivors laugh while describing horrific events, not because it's funny, but because the nervous system is overwhelmed and it's a stress response. Okay, it's how we deal with the trauma. Number 3, anger. This may be the most misunderstood trauma response of all, because after years of abuse, some survivors become angry, and righteously so. And then that anger gets used against them. The court sees anger, but doesn't always see the years of trauma that produced it. And so, number 4, disassociation. Number 4, disassociation. Sometimes survivors seem detached. They seem confused, foggy, disconnected. Again, this is not necessarily deception. It may be the nervous system trying to survive. So why does the abuser often look better in court? Let's talk about something that can be really uncomfortable for victims. Why the abuser sometimes appears more credible. Because abusers have had years to perfect their public image. They may appear calm, charming, rational, professional, and confident. Meanwhile, the survivor is carrying years of emotional and psychological injuries, and many times the trauma is continuing through post-litigation abuse. Right? The abuser continues to abuse her through the litigation process, which continues to put her in a state of fight or flight. Now, not all abusers look credible, calm, and charismatic in court. Let me be clear about that. As an attorney that practices in domestic violence, I would say the minority of abusers appear cool, calm, and credible and charismatic in court. Majority of them say things that are socially inappropriate, that are arrogant, that make them look abusive. And so don't think that just because you're married or you were married to an abusive partner that they're going to 100% or automatically get their way in court. And many abusers dig themselves a shallow grave when they testify. So let's get back. The survivor may be reliving trauma while testifying, right? So that might be another reason that they don't always come across as well as an abuser does, where an abuser is often simply telling a story. And it may not even be a story that's true, because abusers have no problems with lying. Or they may have convinced themselves in their mind of a lie or a story, and they may completely believe that what they're saying is true, but it's a complete fabrication. The survivor is often surviving an experience, while the abuser is often just describing something that they believe in their mind to be absolutely true, even if it's a complete fabrication or lie. Those two things are very different. That doesn't mean the court always gets it wrong, but it does explain why appearances can be deceiving. So, what can survivors do to help their case? The good news is that there are practical things survivors can do. Document events as they occur. Create timelines, keep journals, save emails and text messages, and organize your evidence. I say this time and time again. As a domestic violence attorney and as a survivor of domestic violence, I would tell myself over and over again, I'm never going to forget this. There's no way I could forget this incident. This was so horrific. I'm going to remember this. I don't need to write it down. And then guess what? The next day, the next week, something else huge would happen. And then again, something else would happen, and something else would happen, and something else would happen. You're going to experience hundreds of events. You are not going to be able to remember all of them. Write them down. The other thing is you're going to start to repress those events and those memories as a coping mechanism, as a way to survive. So you're going to start to forget. That's why when you're asked about details, dates, events, your brain just jumbles up because there's so much in there, it's so hard to recall. So when you keep timelines, when you keep journals, everything is there for you. And the more you remember, like your brain has all these synapses, like everything's connected. It's like a little web, right? And so as one memory is triggered, then another memory is triggered, then another memory is triggered, and another memory is triggered. And you begin to remember more and more and more and more, which makes it easier and easier to tell your story and makes you appear more and more credible. So it's very important to keep a journal, keep a timeline, even if you feel like it's arduous or time consuming. The other thing is your abuser is going to manipulate you and convince you that what you're experiencing is not as bad as you think it is, right? Or that these events didn't in fact occur, or he never said that to you, or you're imagining things, or it's all in your head. And if you go back and you are able to read through your journals or you read through a timeline, you can see, this happened to me, right? This is real. I'm not imagining this. This is not in my head. I am being abused. So write it down. It takes your power back for you. Save emails and text messages. Anything in writing, anything he's put in writing can be used as evidence against him later. It's called an admission. Make sure you have the date on it and his face or his name or his phone number or email address, something that identifies that it has come from him. Keep your evidence organized. It will help you not get flustered, right? If your evidence is all over the place, you're gonna get flustered if you need to use it. It will also help you save money if you hire an attorney. The best ways to keep your evidence organized is to make it chronological or keep it by theme, right? So abuse, financial, children, neglect, whatever type of theme you want to organize. And then practice telling your story before court, right? You want to be able to consolidate and condense your story in the most power-packed way that you can. I have victims come in all the time, and it will take them 2 hours to tell me their story. You're not going to have time to do that. You need to be able to practice condensing and telling the most important things first, and practice telling it with confidence. Do it with a friend, an advocate, someone who can listen and say, that makes sense, or you're going off on a tangent. That's too much information that can help you practice. The goal is not perfection. The goal is preparation to help you feel more confident and more empowered before you have to testify. Because preparation helps bridge the gap between what happened and what you're able to communicate under stress. And I believe preparation is one of the most important components to being successful in court. At least I find that with my cases. And that's one of the reasons I spend so much time teaching documentation and evidence organization to Christian women going through the legal process with a coercive controller. Not because survivors are lying, but because trauma makes it harder to communicate what happened. In fact, I find that victims of domestic abuse have the hardest time telling their story, and telling your story is one of the most important things that you will need to do if you have to go to court. And in fact, this is one of the reasons I created my 12-week Equipped to Stand Legal Education Intensive. Every week, I work with women who are intelligent, capable, credible, but trauma has convinced them they're failing. They're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, and they're trying to navigate one of the most stressful experiences of their lives. In our coaching group, we talk about evidence, documentation, communication, credibility, post-separation abuse, custody issues, financial abuse, and how to present your case effectively. I share with you my personal and professional experiences as a domestic violence survivor and attorney, and talk with you about what's worked for me in my cases, and help give you tips about what I've learned has worked and what doesn't work, because knowledge builds confidence, and confidence helps women stand firm when the pressure is at its greatest. Registration for the summer session has already closed. Our first group began tonight, June 16th, while this webcast is airing. If you've been thinking about joining us or just learning about it now, I'm going to do something special. I usually never do this. I am going to open the group one more time. You will miss the first week, but I will open the group if you email me at livefreelegal@gmail.com with subject line coaching group. I'll give you a chance to get patched in to week 2. You'll have an opportunity to watch week 1. It will be pre-recorded. You will miss 1 week, but you still have an opportunity to participate in the remainder of the 11-week sessions. Each group comes with an extensive workbook, a PowerPoint that you'll have access to, and each group is live, presented by me with a Q&A. So if you want to get hooked up, again, email me at livefreelegal@gmail.com and we can get you plugged in one last time. This will be the last week to get plugged in. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until the next coaching group, which will not occur until late fall. So I want to leave you with something important. One of the enemy's greatest lies is this: if they didn't believe you, your story doesn't matter. That is simply not true. If there is something that the devil cannot steal from you, it is your testimony. And that is one of your greatest powers. God saw what happened, God knows the truth, and your worth is not determined by the outcome of a hearing. Psalm 34:18 tells us, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Friend, if you've ever walked out of a courtroom feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood, remember this: the courtroom is not the final authority over your value. God is, and He sees every part of your story. Until next time, Tuesday, right here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube at Live Free Legal. Keep standing, keep fighting, and remember, you do not have to look like a victim for your experience to be real. Remember, this is generalized legal information and education, not specific legal advice. Nothing in this video creates an attorney-client relationship or a confidential relationship. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.